All right. Good morning and welcome to work sessions with the State and Local Government Committee. This morning we have 5 bills we're going to be looking at, after which we will have a public hearing on another bill. We have a quorum here, so we're going to get started. Let's see, get up my cheat sheets real quick. I am Representative Matlack. I'm the co-chair of the State and Local Government Committee. The purpose of this meeting is for the committee to receive information from staff and others in order for members to consider the legislative proposals before us and to make recommendations or reports to the legislature. Only committee members, the committee analysts, and those specifically invited to attend will be participating in the work session using Zoom. For members of the public wishing to observe this meeting, it is being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel and will also be recorded for viewing after this meeting is concluded. We are also broadcasting the audio of this meeting on the legislative website. Let's see. Please remember to mute your microphone when you are not speaking. This is a public meeting, and I must remind you that while we are meeting, discussion must happen on screen and not by way of the Zoom chat. You may use the chat to request to speak or indicate that you are having a technical issue. For those who are not panelists, for those who are attendees, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and our committee clerk will check in with you. But otherwise, unless you're invited in, it will be the committee members and our staff. If you're having technical difficulties, please contact the committee clerk, who will try to help resolve the problems, or contact the Legislative Information Technology Office if necessary. Members will speak with leave of the chair. Materials will be provided electronically. For those on the committee, Lynn did send out materials this morning shortly before 8:30. So we have her analysis of all the bills that will be appearing before us today. When it is time for the committee to vote, we must have a quorum present, at least 7 members, including a senator. Thank you, Senator Rosen. In order to be counted as present, your identity must be visibly verified on the Zoom screen. So in the past, Jody, when we've voted, Cheryl will call the roll, and people will respond. You need to have your not only your voice, but also your face present in order to vote. But we always do that. So I'm just reminding people. I will now call on people to introduce themselves. We have Senator Rosen, if you could, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. I'm Kimberly Rosen, Senate District 8, and my district consists of Castine, Penobscot, Orland, Verona Island, Bucksport, where I live, Orrington, the City of Brewer, Holden, Dedham, Lucerne, Eddington, Great Pond, Bradley, Clifton, Lincoln, Lowell, and Burlington. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Representative Mark Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Mark Bryant. I represent House District 24, part of the town of Wyndham. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Representative Dorr.
Good morning. My name is Donna Dorr. I represent District 85, which is a part of Augusta.
Good morning. Representative Paulus does not seem to be here yet. Representative Copeland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Lynn Copeland, and I am proud to represent the folks in District 14, which is downtown and coastal Saco. Welcome.
Good morning. Representative Toole.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Will Toole. I represent the Machias area, plus Lubec and Eastport, and I'm probably sitting in part of Representative Dorr's district at the State House today.
Good morning. Representative Head.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Frances Head. I live in Bethel, and I represent District 117. Thank you.
Good morning. Representative Greenwood.
Good morning and thank you. My name is Randy Greenwood. I represent House District 82, which are the towns of Litchfield, Monmouth, and my hometown of Wales in both Androscoggin and Kennebec counties.
Good morning. And Representative Reisman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Walter Reisman, and I represent District 69, which includes Harrison, Bridgeton, and Denver.
Good morning. Well, we have a quorum, and we have several bills before us, so let's get started. And I'd like to, yes, Representative Downs, did I miss you? Representative Downs, my apologies. You could please introduce yourself.
That's no problem at all. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Kathy Downs, and I represent District 130, which is Bucksport and Orrington. Thank you.
My apologies. So let's see, and also our analyst, Lynn Caswell, and our committee clerk today is Jody Breton. Our Cheryl is not with us this morning, so Jody will be stepping up to fill in for her. So this morning, Lynn, if you'd like to get us started, we'll go right through the numbers. 826, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 826 is a resolve directing the University of Maine system to study the potential effects of the state adopting Atlantic Standard Time. And you'll recall that we had a work session on this bill on the 3rd, and there were some concerns raised about making it clear in the bill that if the University of Maine system was unable to find funding for this study, that they were not required to conduct the study. And so the committee asked that an amendment be drafted, and I am going to pull it up for you very soon so that you can look at it. So you should be seeing an amendment, says sponsors amendment. This is the original bill draft with two sections added in the yellow. The first one is right next to the sentence that says the University of Maine system shall, within available resources, study and analyze. And then, and the second amendment is funding for the study must be through private donations to the University of Maine system. And the system is not required under this act to undertake work for which it does not have or receive sufficient resources. So the committee, I should have started with the committee made a motion to table on this bill to allow time. And the sponsor is Senator Bennett. I do not know if he's here, but I did share this with him sometime last week.
Certainly. Representative Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to take off the table LD 826.
Is there a second?
A second.
I think for something like this, all we need is a raise of hands. All those in favor of taking this bill off the table? I see lots of hands today, so I think that's a good motion. So we can move forward. Representative Bryant, did you have something you wanted to say? Or, oh no, your hand was just still up. Is there Representative Toole?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have Senator Bennett with us?
Apparently we do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I just tried to promote him.
There we go.
Great. No, and once he's with us, I'd just like his thoughts on the amendment and
Okay.
a couple of other small things that I noticed reviewing this morning that I'd like to discuss as well.
Okay. Good morning, Senator Bennett. Welcome to State and Local.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good to see you. Sorry, just joining and was alerted that my bill was coming up, and I'm trying to get myself properly organized. I did remember seeing the amendment, and just pulling that up now. Yes, this does reflect what I was hoping would be done with this bill to make it absolutely clear that the University of Maine is not required to do this if funding from private sources are not available. The intent of the bill was not to force them to do something that they couldn't, that there would not be money for, draining resources from the system.
Thank you. Representative Toole, did you have a question of Senator Bennett?
Yes, I did, and I appreciate that. I think that was one of my major concerns with the bill, that if we're going to start having the humane systems doing these different studies, that that it was going to get out of hand. But I think the way that you've structured this amendment, that's unlikely to be the case. Having said that, a couple of minor technical things. One, I was wondering if you'd be interested in having, as part of the study, the public health impacts of changing time. And if you want to respond to that, we go on to the other ones.
Yes, I think that that should be part of the study. I think this, in fact, studies I've seen suggest that health is a major reason to stay on one time zone.
Okay, so that's good. The other, knowing that this can be a divisive issue, I'm wondering if you'd be open to having the emergency taken off as a means of moving it through on a more, as a better chance of moving it through and putting it in a better position.
Yeah. Thank you, Representative Toole. Yeah, I'm certainly amenable to that. And by the way, there's also been some movement in other states on this issue. So I think part of the study will inevitably look at, the study is going to come back to the legislature, and then there may be or may not be legislative action. So I think we have time here to be thoughtful. Forgive the pun. But I think we also should be paying attention to what other states in our region are doing, and many of them are actually moving forward on looking at this very seriously.
Great. And the last question I had, and I know the study sends this to Idea B, but this committee has taken on the issue of the time zone repeatedly since I've been here, and probably before that as well. I personally think the results should come here as opposed to going to Idea B, especially if we're doing a broader study than just businesses or just economic impact.
No objection to that either.
Okay, sounds good.
Representative Greenwood.
Based on Representative Toole's request and the good senator from Oxford's responses, I would move ought to pass as amended.
Representative Greenwood has moved ought to pass as amended.
I'll second that.
And Senator Rosen seconds that. Lynn, did you have a question? Otherwise, I was going to call on Representative Reisman.
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out that the report back is due December 31st of 2021. So I don't know if removing the emergency gives the committee pause on that report back date. So I'm just raising that as an issue, a potential issue.
Thank you. Representative Reisman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to remind the committee that there's a statute on the books already dealing with Atlantic Standard Time. It was passed, I believe it's law, and it includes the entire Eastern time zone, not just the coast. Once everybody signs on, then the state of Maine would sign on. So this is a kind of a duplication of efforts. So I would recommend that we vote this down and vote it as not to pass.
Lynn, could I ask a question? Could you reiterate what the current statute says about Eastern time zone?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So last session, this committee enacted a resolve. So it's not in the it's not in the red books, as I call them.
Okay.
And the resolve stated that the Secretary of State will keep track of whether the U.S. Congress enacts legislation permitting full-time Atlantic Standard Time, and whether the states in the Eastern time zone, as Representative Reisman stated, whether they adopt going to Atlantic Standard Time. When those two conditions are met, then the state of Maine would be placed into the Atlantic Standard Time. It does not address the question of a study. I believe it does not, because if the Congress, US Congress acts, a study may not be required.
Thank you. Representative Toole?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And beyond that, the other part of that is, as we often hear, if we haven't already heard yet this session, is one legislature can't bind another, and we can always change and adjust. I'm not saying we're to the point of doing that, but as one who's always supported the time change, but was skeptical of this bill originally, I think I'll be supporting this motion and what's going on before us. To Lynn's point about December 31st, I wonder if we should allow for extra time, knowing that realistically it will take time to raise money. The university, 15,000 or whatever it's going to cost, 75, is not going to fall out of the sky. It's not going to be printed. So I'd be open to putting a different date in, of maybe even, well, I'm not sure. If Lynn has any thoughts on what kind of a date would work to facilitate that, or if Senator Bennett has dates, I'd be open to those as well.
So if we, if this bill does not have an emergency, is not an emergency measure, then December of this year will not work for completion of the study, at least not a good study. I mean, it'd be just it'd be very rushed. So is there another date that might work, Lynn?
Oftentimes reports are due back, if they're not in December, February 1st. That you want to select a date that would give the committee time to then turn around and report something out. So I wouldn't go past, the beginning of March.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Actually, if I may,
yes.
Madam Chair,
yes.
There's nothing that would prevent the committee in the second regular session, if the report was not done, the committee could, I was going to say the committee could issue a report on a non-report and perhaps give an extension, but I'm not exactly sure if you can issue legislation based on a report that you don't get. So
Okay.
I was trying to be creative, but I don't think I was.
Okay, thank you. So, and Senator Bennett, at the end of our discussions last time, did I hear that you mentioned that the University of Maine would be using a pre-existing study from Massachusetts so that the study involved would be shorter and less expensive?
Yes, that is a possibility, and I think that there's been a number of. I mean, the purpose for the study is that, number one, it informs the legislature, right, and it gets everybody current. But also, it's required under current rules with the federal DOT, in order to get a study, in order to petition the DOT for the change. So there's been a lot of work done already, and there's some expertise at the University of Maine that has already looked at this issue in other jurisdictions, and so I don't think it has to be an overly elaborate study, and can use the previous studies as a launching point for updates and reconsiderations and new data.
Thank you. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My husband put this bill in 20 years ago, so that's why I have to support it.
Okay. Are there any further comments about this bill or questions that we can answer? There being none, Jody, did Cheryl leave you the list of how we vote in this committee?
Yes, I do have that.
Perfect. So if you could read the list, and we'll take a vote on this bill at this time. And it is, well, before, maybe I should clarify first, it's ought to pass as amended. And the amendment is, would it be removing the emergency or no? Yes, it would be removing the emergency. Moving the due date, Representative Greenwood.
Yeah, taking into consideration all we discussed this morning, removing the emergency, moving the due date to say February 15th. To
Okay.
give it a little bit more time.
And accepting the senator's amendment?
Yes, of course.
And report back to state and local?
And report back to state and local.
Okay.
If
Senator Rosen? I'm sorry, Lynn.
If I may, I thought there was also a request to add public health impact. So I have 4. Add public health impact to the study, remove the emergency, report back to SLG, and move the report back date till February 15th.
Right. All right. Senator Rosen, did that answer your questions?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay. Representative Reisman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering what effect the Department of Transportation has on all this process, if anybody knows the answer to that.
I believe either Senator Bennett or Lynn can answer, but to my understanding, if an individual state wants to petition to move to a different time zone, it would have to go through the Federal Department of Transportation with this type of study indicating why it's a good move to make. Is that correct? Senator Bennett?
Yeah, that perfectly explains my understanding of it too. And right, and I think the DOT just needs to know that we have, the states have not done this recklessly, that we've actually studied it, because it's just part of their requirement of being our big brother, I guess.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Representative Reisman?
I believe so. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess, Jody, now we are ready to vote.
Okay, so with the amendment, Representative Greenwood is good with it, as well as Senator Rosen, so that you made the motions?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I have not to pass as an amended. Senator Baldacci is absent. Senator Rosen?
Yes.
Senator Rosen, yes. Senator Claxton is absent. Representative Matlack?
No.
Representative Matlack, no. Representative Toole?
Yes.
Representative Toole, yes. Representative Bryant?
No.
Representative Bryant, no. Representative Greenwood?
Yes.
Representative Greenwood, yes. Representative Paulus?
Yes.
Representative Paulus, if I mispronounce your name, please correct me. Representative Head?
Yes.
Representative Head, yes. Representative Dorr?
No.
Representative Dorr, no. Representative Reisman?
No.
Representative Reisman, no. Representative Downs? Absent?
Nope, nope.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I couldn't get my mute off.
How would you like to vote, Representative Downs?
Yes.
Representative Downs, yes. Representative Copeland?
Yes.
Representative Copeland, yes. So 7 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative, 2 absent. And the minority report?
Ought not to pass. The others? Ought not to pass. Is that fine? Okay. I'm seeing 3 heads bobbing up and down. So yes.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much for your consideration.
Oh,
Appreciate
you're
it.
welcome, sir. That closes that work session, and we'll now move on to a work session for LD 1073, a resolve establishing the commission to research effective strategies and efficiencies of legislatures, from Senator Stewart. Is Senator Stewart with us this morning?
I do not see Senator Stewart.
Okay. All right. Lynn, if you could walk us through this bill, that'd be great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a resolve that establishes a commission to research effective strategies and Strategies and Efficiencies of Legislatures. And this was brought to us by Senator Stewart. He discussed that there are potential issues in the legislature and the way the process works. They're perennial issues. There may be ways to be more efficient and effective. The commission would look at ways to improve the operation of the legislature. He indicated that the bill could be amended to include representatives representing the independent caucus, but mentioned that he was not entirely clear how they would be selected. The League of Women Voters voted in favor of this, testified in favor, and you did receive a few written comments. So this resolve, as I said, creates a study commission. If it's reported out to this committee, either ought to pass or ought to pass as amended, it will be placed on the special study table, and the Legislative Council will decide whether to authorize this commission. As it's set up, the commission includes 2 senators from the 2 largest parties, 2 representatives from the 2 largest parties, 2 members from the executive branch, 2 members from the judicial branch, and the NCSL representative. And the commission is required to report back by December 1st. The duties of the commission are, as I've indicated in my analysis, looking at the structure, the members, the process, the number of bills introduced each session, and a variety of other kind of operational issues. Any legislative study commission has to comply with Rule 353, though the Leg Council may, if it so chooses, waive some of these requirements. So I have listed the main ones out and have check marks next to the ones that this commission meets. I will say that the ones it does not meet is that it's required that a majority of the members are legislators. This actually has a majority of non-legislators. The other deviation from joint rule is that that the members must be appointed by the speaker or the president, except for the non-legislative members. And this, because this has this, anyways, this could be an issue, but sorry, it has a provision in it that says notwithstanding joint rule 353. So that generally will get this commission off the, within the requirements. And the other is that legislators are supposed to be paid per diem and expenses, but non-legislative members are not otherwise compensated. That language is not in this bill, but again, the Legislative Council does have the opportunity to add provisions in that this bill may be missing, or excuse me, this resolve may be missing. It does not indicate that the report back goes to a specific committee, the legislature, or the Leg Council. So if this was going to move forward, you may want to consider identifying where the report back would go and which entity or committee of the legislature would have the authority to report out legislation. Any questions?
Excuse me. So we don't have Senator Stewart with us, so we wouldn't be able to necessarily answer any questions. Is there somebody who would like to? Are there any questions with regard to this bill? Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the first issue, if we could, I think before we even consider on how we're going to vote on it, I think we need to have a chat about what the actual scope of the commission is. And there is a lot more in here than simply operational things. And by that, I mean, there's big decisions on things like legislator pay, or whether to study that, I should say, whether to study legislator pay, whether to study the number of legislators, both of which in and of themselves have either been studied or discussed at great length. And I would like to, I think we need to do a study like this. I think it is important, especially after this session. But I think those two things in particular probably should be taken out because they could well derail the rest of the study. Whereas most of the rest of it is, as Lynn said, is operational things like the number of bills, the bill process, whether our committees are aligned properly, basically, or not even aligned, but whether the committee structure, large council structure, a lot of that is operational, and it's a great time to look at those type of things. But we shouldn't be we can't expect the legislature to get bogged down in pay and the number of legislators again, because if we do that, it isn't even gonna get off the ground.
Okay. Excuse me. Are there any other questions? Would you like to? The other thing that comes up is I believe there's a second bill with regard to the structure of the legislature coming down from Representative Bailey in the not too distant future. Do you know anything about that, Lynn? I should have looked into it further, but I just saw it first thing this morning and I did not check.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I
He said it just came out.
So that has not been referred to us
Okay.
yet, unless it's the enhancing data bill.
I don't think so. Okay. Representative Bryant, did you have a question?
I'd move on not to pass on LD 1073.
Is there a second for this? Representative Dorr, seconds ought not to pass? Okay. Representative Toole, did you have another question?
I did receive a message from Senator Stewart that he's not able to join us today, that he has final exam week. So
Okay.
I know we have a policy and that we're towards crunch time, but I would ask that we table until.
Are you making that motion?
I am making that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the motion to table and second. It's not non-debatable, non-discussable. Jody, if you could call the roll on tabling this bill, please.
Okay, so your tabling motion takes
Our
off the
tabling-
ought not to pass motion.
Correct.
Okay,
It was Representative Toole, seconded by Representative Greenwood.
just gonna change the names. Table. So it's a table motion. If you're in favor of tabling, you'll be voting yes. You're opposed, you'll be voting no. Senator Baldacci is absent. Senator Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Rosen, yes. Senator Claxton is absent. Representative Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Matlack, yeah. Representative Toole.
Yes.
Representative Toole, yes. Representative Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Bryant, yes. Representative Greenwood.
Yes.
Representative Greenwood, yes. Representative Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Paulus, yes. Representative Head.
Yes.
Representative Head, yes. Representative Dorr.
Yes.
Representative Dorr, yes. Representative Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Reisman, yes. Representative Downs.
Yes.
Representative Downs, yes. Representative Copeland.
Yes.
Representative Copeland, yes. That's 11 in the affirmative and 2 absent.
Thank you. We will table this bill and perhaps we can see whether or not Representative Bailey's bill is out there someplace. So moving along, we are going to go to LD 1199, an act to require education and training regarding media literacy for legislators and legislative staff. Lynn, if you could walk us through this, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this bill was sponsored by Representative Kessler. I am not sure if he's in the waiting room at the moment. This bill requires the Legislative Council to provide training to legislators and legislative staff at the beginning of each regular session on media literacy. And the purpose of the training is to help legislators and staff differentiate disinformation, misinformation, and accurate information. The only proponent was Alan Berry, and the Maine Association of Broadcasters testified neither for nor against. There was a question about what current training is required for legislators. There are actually 3. I only identified 2, but I'll throw the last one in. So you are all required to be trained on harassment, and that includes sexual and racial harassment. The legislature is also required to be trained on FOA, and you're also required to have an ethics training, which is not included on my analysis. But it is a fairly straightforward bill. I did not see any technical issues with the language or the section of statute that it's seeking to amend.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Lynn? Any questions with regard to this bill? Representative Toole?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So being from the media in the past, I'm sensitive to the issues that are raised here and in a lot of ways sympathetic to them. At the same time, I find bills like this and some of the others we'll be dealing with today, I just believe that people could go to the Legislative Council directly, ask their leadership to address these issues, update the policies and training policies without having a bill. I mean, we elect our House and Senate leadership. Both parties do. We presumably elected them because we believed in what they were running on and their ethics and standards. And I just think that this is an issue that is best left to the Leg Council. Now, if folks want to do a letter or something like that, urging Leg Council to do a more complete review of our training policy and trainings that were offered, I think that's a great idea. But to have a bill to do this piecemeal, like we've been doing the last few years, at some point we have to draw a line and say, it's a great idea, but we entrusted our leaders to lead us. And with that, I would move on not to pass.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. I've noticed that Representative Kessler is with us. So if we could bring him over, Jody, that would be great. So he can chat with us. Sorry. Good morning, Representative Kessler. Welcome to State and Local Government.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
You there?
Yes, I am here. Do you hear me?
I'm not hearing you.
No. Okay. Check one.
You don't appear to be muted, but I can't hear you. Okay. Okay. Are there any further questions or comments with regard to this bill? Does anybody have any questions for Representative Kessler this morning? There being none, do we want to move on to vote on this bill, or would we want to give Representative Kessler just a second? Representative Toole?
I would give him a second. I didn't realize he was in the waiting room, but
yep. Oh, he's gone. He may be coming back in though. Once, see if he can get a steady. There he is.
Okay.
Are you there, sir?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Technical difficulties. I apologize.
There you go.
Okay.
So we were just in the process of discussing your bill and whether or not this is something that could be done by just petitioning to the Ledge Council to make it happen.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to respond to Representative Toole's comment. I had actually brought this concept to legislative leadership. And as many of you may realize, the political climate these days is pretty heated. And it is one of those things that nobody wanted to touch necessarily out of fear of it becoming politicized. And that's a valid concern. And that is why I ended up going this route, because I wanted that decision to be up to the legislature itself. I believe that this is such an important decision that really everybody in the body should weigh in on it. And to Representative Toole's point, it does leave it up to the council to determine what that framework would be. So that's just my response to the representative's comment.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions, Representative Kessler? Any questions about the bill itself? There being none, I'll call on Jody to call the roll, and we'll vote on this bill. The motion before the committee is ought not to pass.
Have not to pass by Representative Toole, seconded by Representative Greenwood. So if you're in favor of ought not to pass, you'll be voting yes. If you're opposed, you'll be voting no. Senator Baldacci is absent. Senator Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Rosen, yes. Senator Claxton is absent. Representative Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Matlack, yes. Representative Toole.
Yes.
Representative Toole, yes. Representative Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Bryant, yes. Representative Greenwood.
Yes.
Representative Greenwood, yes. Representative Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Paulus, yes. Representative Head.
Yes.
Representative Head, yes. Representative Dorr.
She may have stepped
We
away.
just lost Representative Dorr.
Mhm.
Representative Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Reisman, yes. Representative Downs.
Yes.
Representative Downs, yes. Representative Copeland.
Yes.
Representative Copeland, yes. That would be 10 in the affirmative and 3 absent.
Thank you for coming by, Representative Kessler. I appreciate your participation today. Thank you. Moving on to LD 1256. This is an act requiring climate impact notes on proposed legislation and agency rules. Representative Lookner is here, so we could bring him across, and we'll ask Lynn to discuss the bill for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this bill requires climate impact statements in 2 situations. It requires climate impact statements. It requires the Office of Fiscal and Program Review, as the office designated by Legislative Council having responsibility for fiscal analysis. So it requires OFPR to prepare a climate impact statement with the assistance of DEP concerning the climate impact that may result from a proposed law. The impact statement is made within the limits of the information provided to the office, and the statement must include, among other things, an estimation in pounds of the amount of carbon dioxide, methane, and other pollutants that may be emitted, how that amount of pollutants may change over time. There should be an analysis of the anticipated effects on any significant environmental changes and any significant secondary or indirect effects, including effects on the state's economy. And again, the climate impact statements, that should say, must be made within the limits of the information provided to the office. This bill also requires agencies in doing rulemaking to include a climate impact note on every rule proposed by them. And the note must describe the estimated climate impact on implementing or complying with the proposed rules with respect to municipalities and counties, the impact on the state in the United States, and the estimated climate impact on globally. As I said, this bill was sponsored by Representative Luckner, and the co-sponsor, Representative Kyle Bailey, also spoke. Both of them focused on the serious threat of climate change and the need for the legislatures to take pragmatic steps. There were some information requests, which I am moving on to now. So the first one was about the separation of powers, because this bill requires DEP to assist. So there is this provision that in the Constitution that no one belonging to one body of the legislature, executive, or judicial branch should exercise any of the powers properly belonging to another body, unless specifically permitted by the Constitution. So the question is whether requiring DEP to assist the legislative nonpartisan staff violates that separation of powers provision. My assessment is that I don't think it's not a clear violation. There are many statutes that we have that require agencies to provide information and reports to the legislature, and those have not been challenged as violating that separation of powers principle. Earlier this session, we did have a bill that would require actual employees to come before the legislature. That would have been a closer argument that that's a separation, because you're requiring actual staff people from another department to come and talk with you. So this is requiring information, and it's a requirement to assist as opposed to saying DEP, you shall provide this information. So DEP does have the ability is only required to assist. I would say that they can argue to the best of their ability based on the information that they have and the expertise that they have. Someone asked about whether other states have climate impact statements. So if enacted, Maine would be maybe the first or one of the first to require climate impact statements. Several legislatures require environmental impact statements or public health impact statements. Those may or may not include the climate impact component. There is a bill, however, in the Ohio legislature, very similar to the one that you are looking at right now. And I included this because I wanted you all to know what portion of the current statute that applies to nonpartisan staff and OFPR and their how they are preparing cost estimates within the limits of information provided to the office. So this is a similar provision in current law. When OFPR does a fiscal analysis, they often go to departments and say, is this going to cost? And the departments can provide information to OFPR to assist OFPR in preparing the fiscal analysis. And if departments choose not to, then the fiscal analysis will be based on information that the fiscal analysts can determine on their own. I did find a couple of technical issues. One is I have no idea, I have been unable to figure out what this phrase means. It's on the bill. I gave you a clear reference because I know you all have the bill right in front of you. But anyways, it's the first sentence, which says, with the assistance of DEP, you'll collect and assemble information, result from the implementation of a proposed law, including all department budgets. If that is intended to say the impact on department budgets, that's an easy, it's an easy fix. I just think the phrase, including all department budgets, is a little unclear. So if you move forward with this bill, you might want to flesh that out a bit. And I want to point out that at the public hearing, the sponsor proposed 2 amendments, both which I will share on the next screen. Both of those amendments are made within the Maine Administrative Procedure Act. The first amendment clarifies which form the climate impact note would be placed on. And the second amendment adds the climate impact statement to the list of information that the agencies are required to provide. So this first one just says it's on the fact sheet required by section 8057A. So that's just saying where this information will be provided by agencies. And then the next change just adds the requirement that an estimate of the climate impact of the rule is included in the agency's analysis that they do for proposed rules. So that, so there were no technical issues with those. Those are just, I think, clarifying within the Maine Administrative Procedures Act. Any questions?
No, excuse me. Are there any questions for Lynn this morning? Representative Lookner, these amendments are your suggestion or your work with the analyst, and they're acceptable to you?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I think a lot of this has come to light through this process. So, you know, and it is my first term as a legislator. So it's interesting that a lot of information has come out through this process, and in retrospect, I would have introduced all these together instead of giving it all to this committee. So I think what makes sense to me is to have this bill carried over so I can introduce all these things as a package for your committee to entertain.
So you're you're asking us to not vote on this today. Does anybody have any opinion on this at present time? Representative Toole?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I don't understand what we'd be carrying over for one. So if we could get some clarification or what the rationale is for carrying it over for one.
Okay.
If we could get some clarification on that.
Thank you. Yes, Representative Lookner, is there not clarity in the bill as you've presented it? Are there other things you wanted to clarify at this point or flesh out a bit more?
Yeah, I just think all the amendments, you know, so there's several amendments, and it would just make sense to present them all together rather than having them, you know, all as separate amendments. So I think a lot of information has come out through this process, and I would prefer to present it all as one comprehensive bill rather than, you know, a series of amendments.
Okay. Representative Toole, is your hand still up?
Yeah, so the amendments that we've been presented thus far are relatively minor and technical in nature. If there are more amendments coming,
no.
Okay.
Then I don't really see a need to carry this over, especially, which leads into the rest of my thoughts on this. And that is, earlier this session, we passed an impact statement bill. Should we pass this one? Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I will guarantee there will be more. I myself have thought about the idea of doing one related to age friendliness. I know there have been discussions about doing one based on the economics. And the more of these we have, the less impact all or any of them do have. So again, I think that if we're going to do anything, Ledge Council really should take a look at what information we're getting, or what if beyond the fiscal note, beyond the one that we already passed on racial impact, Ledge Council really needs to come up with a policy for introducing these impact statements, because they manage our staff and our resources and are the ones tasked with making sure that our staff stays nonpartisan. And the more of these type of things that we have, the harder and harder it's going to be to find qualified, capable, nonpartisan staff that can do analysis without encroaching upon or limiting the integrity of any one or more of them. So I think we need to, for lack of a better term, we need to have a moratorium on impact statements at this point before things get way too far out of hand. So.
Okay, does anybody else, sir, did you have a further comment, or are you all set?
No, I think I've said enough for the time being.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion on this bill from a member of the committee? Representative Greenwood.
I'll move ought not to pass.
Okay, Representative Greenwood moves ought not to pass.
I'll second.
Is there a second?
I'll
And
second.
Senator Rosen seconds the bill. Is there any further discussion, or is there any clarification that we need? Representative Bryant? You all set? Okay.
Oh, thank you. We're all set. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Copeland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering that there's so much information about this, and this is clearly climate control is clearly a priority for the people of Maine. I'm wondering, I think that we are already including this in a lot of our thoughts and a lot of our decision making. I'm just wondering, like, Hannah Pingree's office is studying things like this. I'm wondering if that will give you the same information.
Okay.
Or are you just trying to make a statement? I'm asking if Representative Lookner can clarify.
This is not something that the governor's climate council is considering at this time. My intent here is because I believe, and I think, the majority, as you were touching on, the majority of Maine people believe that the climate crisis is pressing and urgent enough to warrant this sort of consideration on our legislation. So the primary intent is to inform the legislature in making its decisions about the climate impacts of proposed legislation. It's right there in the bill title. That's my intent.
Thank you.
I think the requirement of the impact on municipalities and counties on the state in the United States and also global is very broad. I think it would be beyond the ken of our DEP to provide cogent information at this point, and might get back on a regular basis that they don't have that kind of information available at this point. So we do have a motion on the floor, ought not to pass, and it has been seconded. So I think we're going to move forward with the vote now, if you please, Jody. And Senator Baldacci has joined us.
So we have an ought not to pass motion made by Representative Greenwood, second by Senator Rosen. If you're in favor of ought not to pass, you'll be voting yes. Opposed, you'll be voting no. Senator Baldacci?
Yes.
Senator Baldacci, yes. Senator Rosen?
Yes.
Senator Rosen, yes. Senator Claxton is absent. Representative Matlack?
Yes.
Representative Matlack, yes. Representative Toole?
Yes.
Representative Toole, yes. Representative Bryant?
Yes.
Representative Bryant, yes. Representative Greenwood?
Yes.
Representative Greenwood, yes. Representative Paulus?
Yes.
Representative Paulus, yes. Representative Head?
Yes.
Representative Head, yes. Representative Dorr is not back with us yet. Representative Reisman?
No.
Representative Reisman, no. Representative Downs?
Yes.
Representative Downs, yes. Representative Copeland?
No.
Representative Copeland, no. Minority report would be?
Ought to pass.
Yeah.
Ought to pass as amended.
Ended.
Yes.
Okay. Lynn?
Yes.
I was gonna,
Lynn Caswell. Yes.
I was gonna ask if that was gonna be ought to pass as amended for a fiscal note also.
Yes.
You voted ought to pass as amended, so you're covered.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jody, could you say again the totals? Jody?
9 in the affirmative, 2 in the negative, 2 absent.
Thank you very much. The last work session we have this morning is LD 1394, an act to prohibit legislators from legislating while intoxicated. Do we have the sponsor? Thank you very much, Representative Lochner, for coming by. If we'd like to invite Representative Fecto to come in, that'd be great. And Lynn, if you could walk us through this bill, that'd be great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this bill does prohibit legislators from legislating while intoxicated. And I am going to share my screen. There were some questions about, hoping I'm sharing the right one. Does this say information requests matters for consideration on your screen?
It does.
Okay, so there was some questions about whether either the current statute or the ethics rules applicable to legislators covered this type of behavior. What I've laid out is what is in Chapter 25, which is Title 1, which is the statute on government ethics. It's largely focused on corruption, undue influence in the election process, and it's against or the appearance of misconduct by legislators. There's specific language in it that says legislature cannot legislate morals, and the resolution of ethical problems must indeed rest largely in the individual conscience. It does say that the legislature may and should, however, define ethical standards, as most professions have done. However, the behavior of legislators that this bill is seeking to address is not the focus of Chapter 25. That really is covering conflicts of interest, undue influence, abuse of office, position, campaign contributions, and solicitation. And it's the similar focus in the ethics handbook that you were all trained on right at the beginning. That's really focused on compensation, dealings with state agencies. If you're in a business that's bidding on state contracts, it's focused on gifts or special privileges, soliciting funds for charitable contributions, political action committees, finances, and the like. It really does not address the use or abuse or disuse of substances. It does so. So the current law and the current handbook do not have anything in it that I think addresses this type of behavior or any type of behavior in the legislative arena, not specifically. And the other thing I included in my analysis, because there was a question about whether or not this just dealt with alcohol, and it does not. This bill references Title 29A, which is the criminal code. It does talk about alcohol level, that's item 2, but item 1 is operating under the influence, does also include the influence of intoxicants. So to the question of whether this bill would be regulating any type of substance disuse, I think the answer is yes, it would. Any questions?
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the sponsor this morning? I'm sorry, did you say that he was here today?
He wasn't.
Representative Greenwood, you have a question?
Yes, Representative Fecto had just messaged me that he had to step off at 10. He had another committee work session, and he just hoped that we would consider his bill.
Okay, thank you. Representative Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we understand this bill, and I think the responsibility is in the chambers themselves. I'll move on not to pass.
Thank you. Do I have a second for this motion? Ought not to pass?
Second.
Representative Copeland is second. Representative Tool.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will also be voting ought not to pass, not because the issues raised in the bill aren't serious. They are certainly. Being intoxicated while legislating is a serious thing. While people may want to think that it doesn't or can't happen, it can and may. But with all of that, a couple of weeks ago, with the last Ledge Council meeting, there was a rather lively, robust discussion by Senate President Jackson started about legislative conduct, and not in relation to this per se, but conduct in general. And the Personnel Committee is supposed to be meeting to look at updating our conduct policy, look at flushing that out, look at the repercussions for violating it, what is and isn't allowed, those sort of things. And I think this is something that could be handled within that context. And as they move forward with their discussions and deliberations, and the entire Ledge Council agreed that, yes, this is a perfect time to be looking at not just conduct and decorum, which has broken down over the last few months to couple of years. So with that, I would agree with this, with those who made the motion and ought not to pass, and will be voting that way myself.
Thank you. Senator Baldacci, welcome. I know you were here right at the very end to vote. If you'd like to introduce yourself and your comment.
Sure. Joe Baldacci from Senate District 9, which is the city of Bangor in the town of Herman. I just wanted to indicate I would also be voting ought not to pass, largely for the same reasons that Representative Toole gave, which is I think that the more appropriate venue for handling this issue, which is a serious issue, it's just a question of how best to handle it. I think the best way to handle it is through the Legislative Council, where you have both members of both parties who can work on it together in each chambers. I think that's the best way to handle this instead of creating a situation that, to be honest with you, if we pass this, I am unsure how we would enforce it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further comments on this bill before we move forward with it? There being none, Jody, if you would like to call the roll, please.
Okay, so we have an ought not to pass motion made by Representative Bryant, seconded by Representative Copeland. If you're in favor of ought not to pass, you'll be voting yes. You're opposed, you'll be voting no. Senator Baldacci.
I'm sorry. Yes, ought not to pass.
Senator Baldacci, yes. Senator Rosen?
Yes.
Senator Rosen, yes. Senator Claxton is absent. Representative Matlack?
Yes.
Representative Matlack, yes. Representative Toole?
Yes.
Representative Toole, yes. Representative Bryant?
Yes.
Representative Bryant, yes. Representative Greenwood?
Yes.
Representative Greenwood, yes. Representative Paulus?
Yes.
Representative Paulus, yes. Representative Head?
Yes.
Representative Head, yes. Representative Dorr is not back with us yet. Representative Reisman?
Yes.
Representative Reisman, yes. Representative Downs?
Yes.
Representative Downs, yes. And Representative Copeland?
Yes.
Representative Copeland, yes. That's 11 in the affirmative, 2 absent.
Thank you very much. And Representative Toole?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we move on to the public hearing, should we give Senator Baldacci the opportunity to vote on work sessions that he missed to this point?
Certainly. Senator Baldacci, would you like to do that, or would you like to call it in?
Sorry. I'd be happy to do it right now if it can be done
Okay.
quickly.
We had, Jody, do you want to do this?
Sure, we have LD 826, a resolve directing the University of Maine system to study potential effects of state adopting Atlantic Standard Time. It was ought to pass as amended, remove the emergency, change the due date, has a report back to state and local. It was made by Representative Greenwood, seconded by Senator Rosen. We have 7 people in the affirmative, 4 in the negative, with you absent, as well as Senator Claxton at that point.
Okay, so I think I'd vote ought not to pass on that one.
Okay. Take you off this list. We had an ought not to pass motion on LD 1199, an act to require education and training regarding media literacy for legislators and legislative staff. It was made by Representative Toole, seconded by Representative Greenwood. We had 10 people in the affirmative for ought not to pass, 3 absent.
I would be voting ought not to pass.
Okay. I would have to ask, does this committee require votes on tabling motions?
No.
No, okay,
No, we did table 1073.
great. I just wanted to know if I need to
Okay.
get it out.
No,
Yep.
if only just to
Thank
tell
you.
them that we went by the, I'm sorry. Yes, that was Senator Stewart's bill. We tabled that one.
Right.
And then 1256.
He was here for 12.
Oh, he was here for that one. Okay, cool. Then I will turn it over to Senator Baldacci, the chair.
Well, thank you. We have a public hearing today on LD 1340. Just gonna go through the standard notes on public hearings. Okay, so this matter is currently being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. Means anyone who is a participant in the meeting via Zoom can be seen and also heard if their microphone is unmuted. People on Zoom meeting waiting to testify cannot be seen or heard until they are called upon to speak. This meeting will be recorded and available to view on the committee's YouTube channel soon after this meeting has concluded. In a moment, if your name on the Zoom square is not the name you use to register to testify, it may be a bit of a challenge for us to identify you. The format is new to all of us, and we expect there will be unforeseen glitches and mistakes. Please be patient. We are doing our best, and we all learn as we go along. A reminder to members of the committee about the use of the Zoom chat function. This function is not to be used for substantive discussions. You should know that the chat window can be viewed by any person taking part in this meeting as a participant. Participants include members of the committee, staff, and any member of the public during the time that they have been promoted to participant for the purpose of providing testimony. All questions of persons testifying will be made through the chair. For each bill being heard today, I or my co-chair will call on sponsors and co-sponsors to speak first. When called upon, you will be promoted from attendee to participant. After presentation by sponsors and co-sponsors, we will call on members of the public based on how they registered to testify. For the bill, against the bill, or neither for nor against the bill, but wishing to provide information. When you are called upon, I will ask you to state your name, your place of residence, and the organization you represent, if any. We now open the public hearing on LD 1340, an act to ensure municipal compliance with federal immigration laws, presented by Representative Randall Greenwood of Wales. Good morning, Representative Greenwood, you have the floor.
Good morning. Good morning, Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and my esteemed colleagues of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. Once again, I'm Randy Greenwood, State Representative from House District 82, which includes the towns of Litchfield, Monmouth, and my hometown of Wales in both Androscoggin and Kennebec counties. I'm here today to introduce LD 1340, an act to ensure municipal compliance with federal immigration laws. To me, this is a simple bill. No one person and no one entity should be able to pick and choose which laws to obey. We are a nation of laws. We are a nation of law and order. Whether it is a political belief or even political pressure, a municipality that knowingly and willingly breaks a federal law must be held accountable, just as one of us would be held accountable. At what point did it become acceptable to not cooperate with our federal agencies, who are tasked with most of all our public safety? We can all agree or disagree with our immigration laws, as it is a right as a citizen. However, to disregard those laws, to purposefully circumvent the lawful actions of immigration authorities or any other federal, state, or local entity is simply a crime by its definition. Those municipalities who choose this path have to, again, like the rest of us, face the consequences for not abiding by the law. This bill would deem any local government ineligible to receive general purpose aid for local schools, municipal general assistance, and state municipal revenue sharing if that local government prohibits or restricts the exchange of information with federal immigration authorities or any other federal, state, or local government entity regarding the immigration status, whether it be lawful or unlawful, of any individual or the maintenance of such information. Our country has determined that knowing the legal status of an individual is the law. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. This is not an anti-immigration bill. I hope that you've noticed that I'm speaking about the bill on its lawful merits, about the rule of law in this country and those that choose to ignore them. Let there not be two standards of what is legal and what is not. No one is above the law. I urge you to join me in supporting this bill with unanimous ought to pass committee report. I thank you for your time and consideration and would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Greenwood. Any questions for the sponsor? Okay. Seeing none, Jody, I think we have some people here wish to testify.
Yes, you do.
Okay, do we have anyone testifying in support of?
I believe everybody who is registered testified in opposition.
Okay. So why don't you let them in and we'll recognize them one by one. Mayor Snyder. Good morning. Welcome to state and local government.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much for having me and allowing me to speak. Good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett.
I think,
Oh,
Mayor,
I've actually got the
wrong committee.
My testimony
Senator
is
Baldacci does not look like Senator Carney, and I do not look
even though
like
she
Senator
was
Representative
only a year
Barnett.
ahead of me.
Representative Matlack. I'm sorry, the testimony was improperly written, and and Senator Baldacci. Thank you very much again for having me. My name is Kate Snyder. I'm the mayor of the city of Portland, and I'm here on behalf of the Portland City Council's Legislative Committee in opposition to LD 1340, an act to ensure municipal compliance with federal immigration laws. Since 2003, the city of Portland has had an ordinance in place that prohibits Portland police officers and other employees from inquiring into the immigration status of any person unless otherwise required by law. In addition to the exception for inquiries where required by law, our ordinance also has certain exceptions for police officers investigating felony crimes where other factors are present. For nearly 20 years, the city has found this ordinance sufficient to protect our city from criminals, while also protecting our citizens and guests from inadvertent profiling, intrusive questioning, and other ill effects. The way this bill is written, it is unclear whether Portland's state funding would be in jeopardy due to its long-standing ordinance. This funding is absolutely critical in supporting some of the city's most vulnerable citizens, and we strongly oppose any legislation that threatens it. Besides potentially penalizing the city of Portland for local policies that have proven to be effective and fair, this bill would destroy the partnership and trust built over the last 20 years between the Portland Police Department and Portland's non-US citizens who make up almost 14% of Portland's population and constitute 75% of Portland's total demographic growth since 2011. In summary, I ask that you vote in opposition to LD 1340. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Is there any questions for Mayor Snyder? Seeing none, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you too.
The next speaker I'm going to recognize would be the Honorable Mark Dion, former sheriff, right, and former state senator.
Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Thank you for the introduction. Representative Matlack, distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Mark Dion, and I'm a resident of the city of Portland. I'm here today to testify in opposition to LD 1340, an act to ensure municipal compliance with federal immigration laws. Thank you for this opportunity to provide this committee with my view on this proposed legislation. To begin with, I've worn many hats in my public service career, but today I base my comments on the lessons learned from 32 years in law enforcement. The cornerstone to policing is trust. Without public trust, the police are severely limited in their ability to effectively protect and serve the communities in their care. If there's no trust, there's no communication. And with no communication, the community is isolated and fearful of the very institution charged with keeping them safe. Moreover, if a community is fearful of the police, then criminals are free to exploit that community isolation with little or no possibility of ever having to face legal consequences for their unlawful behavior. Consider the long road of fear that we have traveled to create and maintain the trust necessary to convince women and children that their claims of sexual assault or domestic violence would be heard and acted upon. How many of these survivors isolated themselves from their right for justice because they were afraid of how the system would treat them? And their fear was aggravated by community sentiments that came together with a narrative that cast women and children as somehow responsible for their own victimization. Today, we are on a similar road of fear and distrust. This bill is a tangible symbol of a narrative meant to exclude, isolate, demean, and if possible, punish those whose only intent was to realize a better life for their families. Portland's ordinance, prohibition on immigration status checks, is our city's attempt to answer the challenge of policing an increasingly diverse population. While this ordinance is clearly the target of this LD, I believe our ordinance represents a policy that enhances our capacity to deliver public safety to all our residents, citizens and non-citizens alike, without the implicit fear that our promise to protect is simply a snare set on the behalf of federal authorities. I've included a copy of the ordinance for your review. If you read the language, it outlines the structure for how the Portland Police and ICE will interact on the question of criminal aliens. The ordinance assumes correctly that differences in racial identity, language, custom, or clothing for that matter, are not valid reasons for the initiation of a police contact for the sole purpose of conducting an immigration check of that individual. The ordinance emphasizing keeping as much enforcement discretion as possible in the hands of local police rather than ICE, without ruling out some level of cooperation when felony crimes occur. It allows cooperation in the investigation of non-citizens where there is a reasonable belief that they have violated federal immigration law. Let me give you a quick fact check as to why immigration is a subject of municipal policy for Portland. Currently, the Portland School District serves 2,300 students who come from homes where English is not the primary language. These students represent about 34% of our public schools' total enrollment, 60 languages spoken. 10, the most common are Somali, Arabic, Spanish, French from West Africa, I should say, Portuguese, Kirundi, Vietnamese, Khmer, Kiruanda, and Acholi. The dynamic of an evolving multiculturalism is and will dominate our city's commitment and yours to define what do we mean when we say we believe in equal protection under the law. None of this lends itself to soundbite politics, which I dare say might be the basis for this LD. We are a home rule state. It is a bedrock of our legislative policy making. Home rule grants municipalities the power to determine their own goals and to act quickly on issues of local concerns. It allows municipalities to experiment with the exercise of their state constitutional right to provide for public safety and the general welfare. Home rule underpins every major piece of legislation considered by this body. We have legalized marijuana, and it remains a federal crime. Federal agents enforce federal drug laws prohibiting marijuana, while local police assist municipalities license cannabis retail outlets. Municipalities can choose to opt in or opt out of the legal marijuana market. It's complicated, but it works.
Mr. Dion?
Yes?
Just a moment. I just received a message. Jody? Jody,
Sir?
I just received a message that the streaming of this shows that the committee is on a lunch break. Can you check the online streaming?
We say we're live. I know our audio has been coming in and out as everybody has in state government, but I certainly will check.
Yeah, that would be good. I just want to make sure we're. But Honorable Mark Dion, I won't ask you to repeat the testimony.
Good Lord, this is like having an objection thrown at you in the middle of closing argument. Okay, it's complicated, but it works because each level of government respects the other government's right to take on new strategies to meet the needs of their constituencies. If we can sort it out for a plant, can't we sort it out for the families? I ask for no less under the principle of home rule from my neighbors from Somalia, South Sudan, Cambodia, Syria, Afghanistan, Burundi, and countless other places too far away from our ability to truly understand the conviction and determination it took for them to find safe harbor in Maine. They should be allowed to continue in their pursuit of their vision of the American dream without the threat of unwarranted police intrusion into their lives. Our tradition of immigration and our belief in the rule of law are not contradictions. We can and should be able to create communities that respect and practice both ideals as a path to a better future for everyone. I appreciate your patience and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning.
Great. Let's see. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Dion? Okay. Thank you. Our next speaker is former Mayor, U.S. Marshal, Chief of Police, Lauren Gilbert, Sr. Welcome. You got to turn your mic on, your mute off, Mr. Gilbert. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Senator. As the Senator mentioned, my name is Lauren F. Gilbert, and I served in government my entire adult life, serving as a police officer, working my way up through the ranks to Chief of Police, U.S. Marshal for 8 years, 5 years at the Maine Community Policing Institute at the University of Augusta, and mayor of the city of Lewiston. I wish to testify in strong opposition to LD 1340, an act to ensure municipal compliance with federal immigration laws. I see this bill as a remedy in search of a problem. In order for a local police department to serve its community, it has to establish trust so that the residents will feel comfortable in reporting crimes committed against themselves or others. We do not need residents to fear the police, regardless of their immigration status. Police need to encourage the reporting of crimes in order to keep a community safe. States have entrusted local control to municipal officials to develop policies that work best for their communities. It has and continues to work well. I'm a firm believer in the community-oriented policing philosophy. It takes a community to solve community problems. This means that no one is left behind, and participation needs to be encouraged to solve such community problems. We lose that when residents are reluctant to get involved in solving crime problems. State and local police train their officers against racial profiling. To question someone's immigration status, perhaps because of color or accent or dress, is contrary to such training. To do so could very well be a racial profiling crime. State and local governments are responsible for training its law enforcement officers. Immigration laws are complex. Without such training, states and municipalities would be subject to lawsuits for their lack of responsibility for training those complex immigration laws. That is the work of the federal government, and it is their responsibility to provide such costly training to their federal officers. I see the remedy for a violation of this proposed statute as simply outrageous from what I read in the three penalties. As I said in the beginning, I see this proposed statute as a remedy in search of a problem. In my view, there is no problem. I urge all of you to kill this bill immediately in committee. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gilbert? Okay, seeing none. Julia, thank you, sir. Julia Brown. We're having, and I should have said this earlier, 3 minutes time limit on speakers. So you have the next 3 minutes, Ms. Brown.
Great. I've also been asked to share testimony from the director of the Maine Business Immigration Coalition. So I'm hoping I can do that after my testimony.
Sure. And yeah, go right ahead.
Thanks. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and distinguished members of the Committee on State and Local Government, thank you for the opportunity to testify in strong opposition to LD 1340. My name is Julia Brown. I am the Advocacy and Outreach Director of the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project, or ILAP. ILAP is Maine's only statewide nonprofit provider of immigration law and related legal aid to Maine's low-income residents. Each year, we serve over 3,000 individuals statewide, coming from approximately 100 countries around the world. On behalf of ILAP, I ask the committee to vote ought not to pass on LD 1340. Prohibiting municipalities from forbidding their employees from inquiring about an individual's immigration status encourages racial profiling, because those officials will often base their inquiry about a person's immigration status on their race or country of origin. 94% of ILAP's clients are people of color and are subject to systemic racism as well as anti-immigrant rhetoric and policy. Through our work, we have heard many reports that suggest racial profiling was involved in law enforcement encounters with members of the immigrant community. We have also seen many cases where individuals of color were arrested and detained by ICE after traffic stops for minor infractions or when no reason was even provided. By threatening to take away state funding from municipalities that direct police to not inquire about immigration status, LD 1340 is essentially state-sanctioned racial profiling. Also, separating local policing from immigration enforcement strengthens public safety, as you've heard. Immigration status is irrelevant to local law enforcement, and many law enforcement agencies recognize that immigrants play a vital role in creating safe communities. When local police entangle themselves in federal immigration enforcement, it creates fear and distrust. LD 1340 could dissuade many Maine residents from reporting criminal activity, including domestic violence, sexual assault, or sex trafficking. Laws like LD 1340 also prevent US citizen family members and friends from contacting local law enforcement out of fear of jeopardizing their non-citizen family members or friends' safety and status. Such a chilling effect would impede local law enforcement from being able to enforce Maine's criminal laws. LD 1340 aims to turn every law enforcement officer into an ICE agent and would have dangerous consequences and a negative effect on public safety. For those reasons, I urge you to vote ought not to pass on LD 1340. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can have you bring those comments after I recognize other people who were here.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Michael Kabidi with the ACLU, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Senator Baldacci, Representative
You have the
Matlack.
next 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Senator, and esteemed members of the committee. Good morning. I'm Michael Kabida, Policy Counsel for the ACLU of Maine. And on behalf of our members, I'm here to testify in opposition to this bill, which would punish communities that protect their residents' constitutional rights. The Honorable Mark Dion mentioned lots of African countries, but forgot Ethiopia, where my family's from. At the outset, we note that over the past few years, the public and the full legislature spent considerable time and energy roundly rejecting similar bills. Like those bills, this bill presents a number of constitutional concerns. First, it undermines the 10th Amendment and the power of state and local governments to exercise their discretion about law enforcement priorities. Second, this bill will undermine community trust by punishing municipalities who refuse to collaborate in the harassment of anyone who looks different. Third, it'll lead to violations of the 4th and 14th Amendments to the US Constitution, which in turn will expose state and local agencies to expensive litigation and civil liability. These consequences will likely result in widespread mistrust of law enforcement, impoverishment of our communities, and harm to the most vulnerable Mainers. The citizenship inquiries and immigration information sharing that this bill seeks to impose on local law enforcement could easily lead to increased enforcement of immigration detainers. Immigration detainers are not arrest warrants. Unlike criminal warrants, which are supported by judicial determination of probable cause, ICE detainers are issued by ICE agents themselves without any authorization or oversight by a judge or other neutral decision maker. Without the safeguards of a judicial warrant, ICE detainers have repeatedly resulted in the illegal detention of individuals who have not violated any immigration laws at all and are not deportable, including US citizens and immigrants who are lawfully present in the United States. In fact, between 2002 and 2019, ICE erroneously issued more than 3,000 detainers for US citizens. According to ICE's own records, at least one of those detainers for US citizens was issued in Maine. Since ICE detainers are not based on probable cause, state and local law enforcement agencies violate the 4th Amendment when they hold a person on an immigration detainer alone. This can be very costly for local jurisdictions already strapped for resources. Local government institutions can even be held liable for imprisoning undocumented immigrants pursuant to ICE detainers if the detention does not comply with constitutional requirements. This bill would make it difficult for Maine localities to refuse to comply with these detainer requests, exposing those localities to legal liability. The best way to advance this bill's sponsors' wish that Maine municipalities follow the law is to reject this bill. I have more information in written testimony I submitted this morning. I encourage committee members to peruse it. I urge you to vote ought not to pass. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'm happy to try to answer questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rebecca Graham with the Maine Municipal Association.
Thank you, Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and distinguished members of the state and local government. My name is Rebecca Graham, and I am here providing testimony in opposition to LD 1340 on behalf of our 70-member Legislative Policy Committee. Federal policy emanates from the nearly self-evident recognition that state and local enforcement agencies do not have the capacity to fully enforce federal law in addition to state law and municipal ordinances. This separation is at least in part a matter of recognizing the reality that local law enforcement officials don't have the training or resources to take on that role to the full extent permitted by law of federal immigration agencies. Town and city officials do not have the legal authority to prohibit or in any way restrict any other government entity from conducting any sort of activity outside their municipality's jurisdiction, and that includes communication that is already legally required. However, it's important to note that this bill points to a section of federal law that notwithstands this authority to communicate with federal authorities if it conflicts with other federal state, or local laws to the contrary. And I included that within my testimony. Such communication is already seen as subservient to state and local laws. When an individual has contact with local police, that individual could be flagged or wanted by federal authorities, and that's discovered when running that individual through a national database for an intended interaction with a local police. At that time, the federal agency is the only one who can authorize the detention of an individual at a local jail, and only does so when it can guarantee assuming the costs of detaining that individual, as well as produce a plan for sending them to a federal facility. If federal authorities are unwilling to detain or request the detention of that individual on their flag, there's no reason that municipal police should assume that there's any imminent violation. And because of this, that individual should be denied any services that any other resident of a municipality should be eligible to receive. Additionally, if the federal government were truly concerned about food and housing assistance being inappropriately offered to individuals, they would invest greater resources to provide specialist enforcement necessary to support their own enforcement efforts and preempt local and state laws to the contrary, and that's clearly not the case. As federal government must also provide those same services to individuals who await administrative review of their immigration status. It's unlikely that they believe that this type of enforcement is necessary or a proportional drain on public funds. Additionally, federal law doesn't intersect with local revenue generation and which creates the conditions to collect sales and lodging tax that fills the state coffers. And suggesting that revenue sharing or any other state funding is a condition of enforcing law that municipal officials don't have the authority to enforce kind of strikes officials as an overreach that makes little sense. So as already has been stated, this bill also is a mandate. And it's a mandate for an imaginary problem that's not proportionate with the cost of assuming this unnecessary and unneeded activity that should be provided by federal government. So for all of those reasons, municipal officials ask that you oppose LD 1340.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Graham. Any questions? Seeing none, I would ask Kelly Merrill. Let's see. Thank you, Ms. Merrill. You have the floor for 3 minutes. Go right ahead.
Thanks. Good morning, chairs, Senator Baldacci and Representative Matlack and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment. My name is Kelly Merrill. I'm a resident of Skowhegan, a community organizer and activist for DICE Maine. I'm also the mother of a Latinx child here today to oppose LD 1340. I was reading this bill so I could explain it to others and found myself just incredulous that what it is that Representative Greenwood is proposing is to punish municipalities for refusing to cooperate with an agency responsible for countless human rights abuses by taking funding away from their schools. To remind you, some of those abuses include physical and psychological torture, forced feedings, forced hysterectomies, and rape. This bill punishes those municipalities that have the audacity to exercise their right to home rule. Home rule is what protects us from the likes of ICE and the harm they visit upon refugees, migrants, and immigrants. Of course, municipalities should refuse to cooperate with an organization responsible for these human rights abuses, one that operates with impunity, without transparency, accountability, or oversight. It's troubling that Representative Greenwood feels justified in threatening.
I'm going to please ask you kindly to refrain from engaging in any kind of personal attack, okay? If you want to state your position, that's fine, but I'm not going to allow that kind of discourse in this setting, so thank you.
Thank you. This bill targets our friends, neighbors, coworkers, and community members who grow and pick our food, maintain our homes, and care for our children and elders. Besides being morally reprehensible, besides demanding cooperation with an agency responsible for human rights abuses, this bill presents a danger to public safety. When people cannot call emergency services, report a crime, serve as witnesses, or go to court for fear of being picked off by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, we all suffer. I would add that we should be doing racial impact studies for each bill. We should be weighing the impact of policy upon our most vulnerable people. The very presence of ICE is oppressive and terrifying in our community, and we must resist their oppression and abuses of people in the state. LD 1340 proposes to further systematize racism. I urge you to oppose it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Merrill. Any questions for Ms. Merrill? Okay, thank you. I would ask Zeb Green. Mr. Green, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak today and to state my opposition to this bill. My name is Zeb Green. I'm a minister living in Skowhegan, Maine. And I used to live in El Paso, Texas, where I ministered on both sides of the border in El Paso and in Juarez. And I lived in El Paso 2 years ago when there was a mass shooting in a Walmart where 23 people were killed. And this is relevant, I promise. I was a minister on the ground providing spiritual support for those who were wounded in the shooting, those who were dying, the families, and the first responders who were there. And in the emergency facility, morale was quite low because numerous people were not coming to seek aid who had been survivors of that attack. They were not coming because ICE and Border Patrol were part of the first responders team and community trust was lost. So as we sat there, we were horrified knowing that there were wounded people, traumatized people, potentially dying people who were not seeking the aid that they needed, who were not able to testify and provide their witness of the attack that they had just experienced, who could very well be dying alone because they were afraid that this community was being turned against them, that the people who should be providing aid might move to deport, might move to harass families, might inquire in ways that were unhealthy and were toxic. And by passing a bill like this, we would be turning every municipality into a place of potential fear. When an emergency arises, more people will be afraid to reach out. More people will think that their schools could turn against them, that their law enforcement can turn against them, that maybe even their hospitals could turn against them. We can't let our municipalities become a source of danger. We need, as many people have testified, to build community trust and to look into our own purview. We will be forcing, if this bill passes, municipalities to decide whether or not they want to provide trust for their communities or whether or not they need funding to continue to provide services for the rest of their community. We would be creating a situation that was lose-lose for Mainers. I urge you to say no to this bill, and I urge you to create a place where Maine provides trust and safety for everyone in the state. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Any questions for Mr. Green? None, but thank you, Mr. Green, for joining us. Okay, Maria Woodbury.
Hello, are you able to hear me? It looks like I'm not able to get my video working.
We can hear you.
Wonderful, thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I want to thank the members of the committee and the chairs as well. I am speaking today in opposition to LD 1340. I'm a lifelong Mainer, currently living in Westbrook. I'm also a descendant of early settlers here in New England and in Maine. You know, my people came here before the nation's founding and founded some of the first police departments, as well as serving in local government, municipal government, and colony government before states were states. So my folks wrote a lot of the laws that our nation has been founded on. And so coming from that perspective, my people came here, unlike today's immigrants, honestly, for land theft through genocide. I think that today, Mainers and people in my family like to think of ourselves as welcoming and kind people. We like to help our neighbors when we can. My neighbors have shoveled out the end of my driveway after the plow went by many times. we want to help whenever we can, even if we kind of tongue in cheek joke a little bit about people from away. We still want to reach out and help folks when we have the opportunity, when we're able to. I think that LD 1340 aligns our communities with federal policy that's in direct opposition to our shared values as Mainers. Those who want to keep government small should also oppose this bill because it goes against our home rule established in Maine, which is something that I support. Others have mentioned as well. Municipalities have the right here to make our own rules, and that's something that we need to maintain. I also just wanted to add that you know, as local governments and police are currently grappling with how to improve police relationships within communities during this time of racial reckoning, cooperation with federal immigration officials undermines all of those efforts. I do think we are in a time of reckoning. I do think we need to go through that process. And I think inviting cooperation and requiring cooperation in a way that puts communities who decide not to.
Ms. Woodbury, you have 10 seconds.
Okay. In financial hardship is just not something that we need right now for our state. So I want to again ask that you oppose 1340 and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Woodbury. And Julia Brown? Ms. Brown, I think you had, I wanted to recognize people who obviously were here first, but you had someone else's testimony that you wanted to share with us.
Yes, thank you. It's Beth Stickney, who's director of the Maine Business Immigration Coalition, asked me to read.
You still have the same 3-minute.
Perfect, thank you. I'm a lawyer who has specialized in immigration law and policy for more than 30 years, and I'm the director of the Maine Business Immigration Coalition. MEBIC is Maine's only resource dedicated to providing information, education, and advocacy on immigration and related issues from and for the business and economic perspective. MEBIC strongly opposes LD 1340. Recently, nearly 100 Maine businesses, chambers of commerce, trade associations, and higher education institutions signed the Maine Compact on Immigration, which she included in her written testimony, urging state leaders to adopt policies and practices to help Maine become a destination of choice for immigrants to the U.S. The compact also includes the principle that local law enforcement resources should focus on criminal activities, not on civil violations of federal code. Federal immigration violations within the United States are civil violations. LD 1340 would make Maine a less welcoming state for immigrants at a time that Maine's population is aging, our workforce is shrinking, and deaths outpace births. The recently released 2020 decennial census data shows that Maine grew at only 2/3 of its 2000 to 2010 rate, and at a rate that was only 1/3 of the nation's growth rate. The latter was the second lowest rate of growth in the US since 1790. Yet Maine's economy is beginning to rebound from the pandemic, and employers are already experiencing worker shortages. To have a strong economic future, Maine needs immigrants to want to move to and stay here. LD 1340 encourages a hostile climate towards immigrants. That is the opposite of what Maine needs. Moreover, LD 1340 sees a problem where none exists. Precisely 0 Maine municipalities have laws or policies refusing to comply with Section 642 of the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996. Also, municipalities, particularly those with established or growing immigrant populations or that want to attract immigrants, should be able to exercise local control to prohibit immigration status inquiries for multiple reasons. Chief among them is to prevent profiling. Police are unlikely to ask me, a white native Mainer, about my immigration status during a traffic stop. But without a prohibition, police officers might, and indeed do, ask people of color about their immigration status, even though they might be US citizens, just like me, or have myriad other legal immigration statuses. This kind of police action can fuel distrust and discourage immigrants from reporting crimes or coming forward as witnesses, making entire communities less safe. State funding for municipalities should not be at risk, as LD 1340 would require if they direct their local police not to ask about immigration status. Because of immigration law's complexity, its civil, not criminal nature, the ease with which local law enforcement officers could profile immigrants, and the resulting hostile environment that could make immigrants feel unwelcome in Maine, LD 1340 is the type of law MEBIC and the Maine Compact on Immigration signatories oppose. Please vote against it. Thank you.
You had that timed very well. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Brown, and thank Ms. Stickney. Are there any requests by members of the committee for information for the work session on this item? Representative Matlack.
Not as much request for information, but if Mr. Kabedi from the ACLU is available that day, that I would like to have his him as a resource to answer questions also.
Okay. I would ask Lynn if there are any recent, like within the last 10-year federal immigration reports that talk about Maine. I mean, is there anything in terms of what the feds have done for studying or research or data? Is there anything that talks about the situation in Maine that we should be aware of? I mean, maybe we can get that from the Commissioner of Public Safety or that type of thing. Representative Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've also, there's a bill in judiciary that was a similar title to this. I don't know if they've heard theirs yet. Should we check with them to see if that should be sent here or anything of that nature?
I had Senator Carney sent this here because I think the committee only wanted to do one of those bills and they wanted to have us do the other.
Okay.
So I think she knew she was sending it here.
I was hoping if either both or not, either both would end
Yeah.
up there or there, one or the other.
Yeah.
That's
I
why.
think Lynn has the answer to that question.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Judiciary did vote, the majority voted to refer that bill here. Not all members of Judiciary have signed the jacket, so that bill has not yet been reported out to the legislature to refer back to this committee. So it's kind of in limbo.
Oh, okay. Representative Greenwood, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. In looking at the 3 points in the bill, I think they're probably pretty easy to find, but could we find like a total sheet for the GPA for local schools? Could we find the total sheet as to what the state provides for municipal general assistance? And then the other one was about state municipal revenue sharing. Again, those are relatively easy numbers to find, but drawing your attention to number 2, the general assistance, there's actually 2 tiers of that. There's a 50% and then there's a 90%. And I'd like to see the breakout of those numbers.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Representative Greenwood, you just want the total. You don't need it broken down. Is that correct? I mean, the total, the 50, the 90, the state revenue, you don't need it broken down by municipalities, just the totals, correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Is there anything else, Lynn, that you want to go over?
I have many, many language reviews lined up, and that I can share them with the committee at your discretion.
Well, I have to go back over to HHS, so I will ask if Representative Matlack can
Certainly.
resume. Thank you, Representative.
I was going to say that the sooner we complete our work on some of these bills, the better for our score. So let's move forward with this and complete our work.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will start with the a majority report in case, I don't know if Senator Baldacci already left, but I'm going to start.
Looks like he did.
Well, the first one I'm going to share is a majority report for LD 1035, which is the amendment to provide funding to support the Permanent Commission on the status of racial, indigenous, and Maine tribal populations. and sorry, I'm trying to clear all my screens. So one change that was proposed is to remove the word Maine before the phrase Maine tribal population. So you will see that throughout. Another change that the committee voted in favor of is to authorize legislative per diem and expenses to members of the commission. So that will mean that there's a fiscal note, but there is going to be a fiscal note anyways on this bill. So that's not too much of a concern. Another amendment the committee agreed to was to allow the commission to appoint additional members if the majority of the commission members agree to that appointment of additional members. The authority for the commission to report, to submit legislation to the legislature was changed so that they can submit legislation to the legislature at any time. That does not mean that the usual rules of introducing bills are overruled by this. This just permits the commission to suggest legislation at any time. And the main changes are that this bill establishes an executive director position with staff duties, with staff and duties. And all of this was shared, all this language was shared during the work session. So there really wasn't any change to this than what you saw and what we've discussed previously. So that's what that all is it sets out this, what their duties are: outreach, truth and reconciliation, uncover entities, professionalism, and a database. And this basically replaced the entire bill, provides compensation, removes the word Maine, and it established that position, staff, and what the duties would be of those members.
Okay.
So unless someone has an objection to that, I will.
I don't think so. Representative Toole, did you have a question?
Yeah, not an objection or anything like that, but I was under the impression that Representative Talbot Ross had additional tweaks to the language. That was one of the holdups. Is that, am I misunderstanding, or is everything good to go there?
You are not misunderstanding. Representative Talbot Ross told me that it was technical changes. So because they don't fall within the substantive, I thought I would start this through the process with the revisor's office. Should she ask for something that's substantive, I will bring it back to the committee.
Okay, so with that, you've seen these changes, and they are things like a comma or technical language or clarifying, that sort of thing.
The primary one had to do with the way I described the duties. There was some language about how research is done and the standards applying to research, and it was unclear to me where it went, but it wasn't substantive in any way. Okay. But if it is, if she comes back with something else, please rest assured that I will bring it to you.
Should we maybe hold this one until that's all ironed out?
I was going to say, I think what Lynn said was that she wants to get this part through the revisor's office, and if there's anything further that we need, but to get us on our way at least.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, and I appreciate what Representative Toole is getting at, and there are times when I would hold, but because we're getting so close to the end, I want to push things into the revisor's office and the OFPR process sooner rather than later. So I appreciate where you're coming from, but I will come back with something if there's further concern. So now I'm going to pull up LD 1051, and this is a minority report. And let me find it. So do you see something that says minority reports for language review on 1051?
Yes.
And the members who voted ought to pass as amended was Representative Bryant, Representative Matlack, Senator Baldacci, Representative Reisman, and Representative Copeland. So this is the bill that had to do with allowing municipalities to allow people 16 years, between 16 and 18 to vote. So the original bill said across the state, 16, 17-year-olds are allowed to vote in municipal elections. The amendment that was voted on by the people I mentioned was that municipalities may enact an ordinance to amend an ordinance or amend their charter to permit a person 16 years of age or older to vote in municipal elections. So that's the yellow language on that bill. So I'm going to leave it up for a second in case someone has in the minority report has a question. I see Representative Toole has raised his hand.
Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's not about the minority report, but I was curious what the final tally on this bill was, what the final vote was on it, because I haven't seen it actually.
I do not have that. The only members who were not present, oh, I'm looking at the wrong file. Let's see.
And I can check with Cheryl when she gets back. It's just idle curiosity.
Yeah, I think you would have to check with Cheryl because I don't have a clear indication in my notes.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, that one's coming down. Now I'm going to go to 1215, which was ought to pass as amended unanimous. And this was our good Representative Reisman's bill. Let me bring it up for you. So this, you asked, the ought to pass as amended was to have the report come back to the agencies that have jurisdiction. So the committees that have jurisdiction over the different departments that are audited by the state auditor will receive a report, and each of those committees may report out legislation based on that report. Just so you know, I changed bill to legislation because the legislation includes resolves, and some people are concerned that the word bill does not include resolves. So that's just a technical change to allow committees to report out either kind. But that was a pretty straightforward amendment. So unless someone objects to that one, I'm going to stop sharing it.
Okay.
And any questions on that one?
I'm not seeing any. It is pretty straightforward.
Next is the minority report for LD 117. And also I'm going to share the fiscal note. So LD 117 was ought to pass. So let me start with the fiscal note, because the group that voted ought to pass, I need you to agree that you will vote ought, that you are okay changing your vote ought to pass as amended. So this was the bill that lets the citizens, it was originally to let the citizens choose the state auditor through the election process. And the ought to pass was Senator Baldacci, So I guess I won't get his permission on this at the moment because he's not here. So I will raise that with him at a later through an email. Let me share the minority report. And I'll identify who voted for that. So this minority report, starting in 2024, the state auditor is elected by a roll call vote of 2/3 of a joint ballot of the senators and the representatives. And the ought to pass as amended was Representative Greenwood, Representative Toole, Senator Rosen, and Representative Downs. And those members, and I showed these all to Representative Toole before presenting them. And those members are aware of and are fine with leaving in the 2/3 vote on the ballot, and decided not to go with a majority vote. So there's that one.
Okay.
Then I have 10 emergency power bills, which are all minority reports. So I can share them all on screen, and I can, or I'm not sure if the chair would prefer that I share them with the entire committee through email and then bring back.
Any questions?
Anyone have questions? But I also I did not ask Representative Toole, since he was voted for all of these amendments, if he would like me to go through them one at a time. So I'm sorry to bring this up kind of at the last minute.
That's okay. Representative Toole, would you rather have them done right here and right now? Or do you want to review them electronically and then come back?
I would rather we get them done so that if there is a chance we can get them on for the 13th, I don't know if it is, then maybe we can do that. So
okay, I'm fine with doing that.
Here you go. The first one is amending language in LD 14. The individuals who voted ought to pass as amended include Representative Greenwood, Head, Toole, Senator Rosen, and Representative Downs. And this spells out that if the legislature, so this has to do with when a state of an emergency, the initial one by the governor is over, what happens, how does the legislature come back into session? This specifies that the president and the speaker shall convene the legislature with the consent of the members. This is in line with what the Constitution requires. So this is just specifying something that was not clear through the original language of this bill. So I'm just going to keep going and sharing until someone objects or asks a question.
Okay. So
LD 608, let me see.
Representative Toole, did you get the first one? Were you, was that what you were looking for in the way of an amendment?
yes, I mean, I've seen all of these. This is
Okay.
more for the benefit of the rest. I believe I've seen this one.
Okay. Well, you could point out where people might be interested in what changes were made. Okay. Lynn?
Right.
So yes, Representative Toole was shown all these, I believe, last week. And then all the members who voted for these minority reports, these were shared this morning, so they did not have as much time.
Okay.
So if you have objections, they can speak now. So this was, this took out language, the minority report took out language about the Board of Commissioners of the county having to have a vote or declare a state of emergency. And it also clarifies that if the governor calls back the legislature to vote on a continuing emergency order, that it is for the specific purpose of deliberating on the continuation of that emergency order. So it just clarifies what the governor's convening the legislature is focused on.
Okay.
Okay. Now the next one is LD 955. And this one minority report took out references to states of emergency declared by state or local officials and focused on state of emergencies that were declared by the governor, and added language that in the definition of an emergency order, that it's specifically the emergency order that the governor is authorized to declare under the Constitution of the state and the laws. So it's very specific, clear. It adds clarity to what the governor is allowed to do. And it took out the provision about court having jurisdiction and the language that was a recitation of what I termed as the common law. So this is the minority report on LD 955. Let me stop sharing that one and close that one out. The next one is 980 minority report. This originally the bill only allowed the governor to declare an emergency for 7 days, and as amended, it allows the governor to declare an emergency for 30 days. That's the initial declaration. Again, adding the 30 days, clarified that it isn't that either house can terminate, but that the legislature as a whole can terminate an emergency declaration. So that's the change in subsection 2. The amendment removes the provision that debate and voting can be done remotely. And I think in another, there's another bill being discussed in judiciary that may address that. So that language was taken out. And also the language on this being an impeachable offense and what the penalty would be was removed. Again, taking out language referring to other state and local officials and focusing this on emergencies declared by the governor under the Constitution and the laws of the state. And again, removed the provision about court having jurisdiction and specifying the common law principles that apply. So that is that minority report.
Jody's asked a question as to whether or not others besides Representative Toole are in the Capitol right now. I don't see anybody else on the committee raising their hand, Jody. Representative Toole? We're just responding to Jody?
I did not see the question.
Okay.
But no, I am indeed in the Capitol at this point in time.
Okay.
But no, I believe there was another minority report on this piece of legislation as well. I believe Representative Greenwood had an ought to pass straight up. If memory serves, or I'm maybe blending, there's so many of these. But
Representative, you are absolutely right, Representative Toole. And if a fiscal, so Representative Greenwood did, there was an ought to pass minority report. But there hasn't been a fiscal note that's come back, so I haven't, so that one isn't ready. If a fiscal note comes back, then I will reach out to Representative Greenwood to see if he's willing to change his vote to ought to pass and amended. So thank you for that, because there were two of these where Representative Greenwood had a separate minority report. So thank you for reminding me. And as I said, that minority report isn't ready yet. Next is 1019. This minority report had to do with language. So it's hard to, so what you see in front of you, including the yellow highlight, that's the current law. What the bill proposed, but that the sponsor said was not the sponsor's intent, was to delete the language in yellow and up to 60 days. So the sponsor testified and the minority voted to leave the current statute as is. There was no intention to remove that. So and up to 60 days after the state of emergency is terminated is being left in. What was removed by the minority report was the language that said that the powers in 1A and B above, A and C above, terminate 30 days after the termination of the state of emergency. By taking this out, when the state of emergency terminates, the A and C also terminate.
Okay.
Is there a question?
Representative Tool.
And to be clear, I did check with the sponsor to confirm. Once Lynn had sent me the language, I checked with the sponsor and he was fine with that. So that's where we're gonna go with that.
Next is LD 1039. And let me just see if this minority report takes out the language in the bill that allows for voting during a state of emergency to occur electronically or remotely. And that is the only change in this bill. The language in 2 is exactly as was proposed.
Okay.
And we're more than halfway through, just in case you're wondering.
Okay.
There's 3 more. The next is LD 1137. Oh, this was the one where I said, please vote ought to pass as amended so that I can put some technical words in. And those are the technical words I added. So what this says is that the governor must convene the legislature the 80th day following her initial or any subsequent order, emergency order. So that is just to indicate that it's 80 days after an initial or a renewal that's approved by the legislature. So those were the technical words that I asked you to let me put in, and I put in.
Okay.
Next up is 1142. Let me just check. This also was everyone in the minority group, and it just added, so this states what is an essential business and that emergency orders must apply to all essential business the same way. Essential business in the original bill is defined as any private business. The minority group expanded that definition to include nonprofits and other entities, so that it includes not just private businesses, but nonprofits and other types of business entities for that employ people. So that is that one. And the last one is 1220. And I believe this is the other one that has 2 minority reports. Let me just double check my file. Does Representative Greenwood voted ought to pass? And again, Representative, if a fiscal note comes in, I will discuss with you if you are all right changing your vote to ought to pass to include the fiscal note. So this amendment specified how polling would be done when the legislature and actually, I'm going to take this down because it is not ready for language review. Because as I bring it up there, I realized I had a conversation with Representative Toole and I did not make corrections based on my conversation. So those are all the emergency power bills that the minority reports are ready for. I will work again on 1220 and bring it back, but all the others are ready to be processed unless someone in the minority has an objection to what I've shared.
Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is there a possibility that we'll be able to have these ready for session next week? It would sure be great to, whether they come up on the 13th or not, at least if we have them to a point where they could come up, I think that would be great to have them behind us and dealt with in a timely manner.
I will say I've shared this with others. The presiding officers, the first time you came back for session, asked that the nonpartisans that you all prioritize, and then the nonpartisan offices focused on priority bills. That was not a request made before you came in on the 28th, and thus far it has not been a request that's been made. If the presiding officers ask, then I would be reaching out to the chairs to say which of SLGs would you like prioritized, and Ross and OFPR and OPLA would prioritize. So I guess what I'm saying is I can't guarantee anything, but we are doing our best.
No, and I appreciate that. I know these have been, and rightfully so, held up because we've been waiting for others, but I think we have all we're going to have, and at this point, it would be great to get these out as quickly as possible so the full body can take them up at the discretion of the presiding officers.
Representative Greenwood.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering if 1220 might be ready for language review on Wednesday. So they would kind of go as a block because they're all of like subjects. I think it would be nice to keep them all together for one day in session.
Yeah.
I absolutely have time to make the change for Wednesday. So yes.
Great.
Wonderful. Well, we've gone through quite a few. We are done with we are done with language review. We're all set.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Terrific. Thank you very much. We'll see everybody at 10 o'clock on Wednesday then. Have a lovely one. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.